shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? How dare you?
How dare you?
Live, and it's Tuesday night, March 7, 2023. Welcome back to the Opinionated YouTube Idiot YouTube. I'll get this someday. You know what it is? I get too much in my head before the show starts and I screw it all up. But it's my channel. It is. It's the Opinionated Idiot YouTube channel. And I am your host, Brian. And I think I got my intro right. It is my channel. I should be getting this right every single night that I go live. But sometimes before you go live, you get kind of these nervous jitters. It's a solo show, folks. I gotta perform. I gotta perform. So it's all me. It's all me. But it is a rare night. It's Tuesday night. I am streaming live. And, I made a decision the other day to make a decision that I'm going all out this year. I am putting maximum effort into my channel this year. I am giving maximum effort to put out the best quality content on YouTube, and I'm just going to go for it. I want to go for it this year. So the success so far has been great. I want to welcome all of the new subscribers over on the channel. I appreciate all your subscriptions. I appreciate all the people that can jump in and watch the live shows. I am a live streamer. What we do here is my rock solid nights are Sunday and Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And what I will do is I will download those episodes and re-upload them the next day, or I'll cut them down into smaller segments so I can get it out there in the algorithm, get some more reach to some new subscribers and new people, and let them know about this channel. But again, I want to welcome all the brand new people and all the people that come over and watch on a consistent basis. They are here and they are fans of the channel. But folks, I have an action-packed hour for you all this evening. We're going to get into and talk about Granby Girl is an unsolved murder in Massachusetts since 1978. And through the power of DNA, they have found the person that actually committed this crime. And this woman was found unidentified in Granby, Massachusetts, and she became Granby Girl. But like I said, this cold case now has been solved through the power of DNA evidence. And that's fantastic that now this family can have some closure to that. So we're going to pull that up here. We're also going to talk, there's an update in the Delphi murders, and Alec Murdaugh Juror number 530 is speaking about the trial. And I get it. You're out there, you're free to talk about the trial. I'm pretty sure that you're going to see this gentleman probably write a book about his experience in some time. So I get it. That's probably why he's out on the media trail. But we'll get into the first order of business this evening. And I have an article here that I want to pull up from CBS News local here in Boston, Massachusetts. And if I can pull this up correctly, we have Patricia Ann Tucker identified as Granby Girl in 1978 cold case murder. So Granby, nearly 45 years after her body was found in Western Massachusetts, the young woman known as Granby Girl has been identified as 28-year-old Patricia Ann Tucker. The Northeast District Attorney Office held a news conference, and I have some portions of that news conference that I'm going to play here in a minute after this article. We'll pull that up too. Held a news conference on Monday at the Granby Police Station to announce a major breakthrough in the case. A group of kids playing on a logging road off Amherst Street in Granby found her body on November 15th, 1978, buried under a pile of leaves, stuffed underneath a log. She had been shot in the temple, investigators said. They believe she was killed about 3 months earlier in August of 1978, but they were never able to identify her, and she was buried in Granby Cemetery with the headstone marked as unknown. And here's a photo of Patricia here. It says the first Assistant District Attorney, Stephen Gagan, said advances in DNA technology allowed them to find Tucker's half-sister in Maryland, who led them to Tucker's son. He was just 5 years old when she vanished. While it's satisfying to know who Granby Girl actually was, the investigators won't stop until we identify her killer and bring the family an additional measure of closure and justice, Gagne said on Monday. The investigators had spun decades and will continue until every possible lead is explored. Gagan said Tucker was married to Gerald Coleman, and they were living in East Hampton, Connecticut at the time of her death. Gagan said Coleman never reported his wife missing, which is very odd. He died in prison in Massachusetts in 1996. Gagnon said Coleman is now a person of interest in her murder. Tucker had earlier gone by marriage name Patricia Heckman, Patricia Dale, and later Patricia Coleman at the time of her disappearance. So really great stuff here that, through the power of DNA, and we know that, within the last probably, 50 or so years with the, the advancement here, I'm sorry, not the 50 or so years, within the last about 25, 30 years with the investment. I'm thinking of the case because it was 45 years ago. But with the advancement in DNA, and, we saw a lot of that during the O.J. Simpson trial. It's really when we were really introduced to DNA evidence. Yes, they probably have been using it a little bit before O.J. Simpson trial, but that's really where that became really prominent in a case, and exposing the public to that and letting them know, we have this type of testing that we can, really nail down someone if they've been in a specific situation or a specific area. And again, you look at the Murdaugh trial, we've talked about that a lot. And I think going forward and, the Kohberger trial, we know that DNA evidence is going to be very crucial in that case. But anyway, I have the press conference from the authorities in that area. Let me pull this up and we'll go through that really quick.
What was the date when the son was dropped off?
It was August 8th of 1978. And so the medical examiner's, initial estimate that the remains had been there perhaps as much as 6 to 12 months. We believe now it was more like closer to three and a half months. And his age estimate with 19 to 27, she was 28. So it was definitely on the upper end of that range.
Can you talk about the circumstances where, I think you mentioned that you interviewed the person who found the body? Was she walking, was she hiking, was she in the area, that kind of thing?
Detective White, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. There's been some contradiction over who found the body in 1978 between newspaper articles and different statements, but we did speak to a party who was a child at the time and said that she was involved in the finding the remains with a group of kids playing in the area the remains were found in.
Thank you. What about that DNA evidence? When did you guys send that DNA? I think was it Orthram?
Yes,
Othram.
Yep.
Othram. Okay.
Othram.
When did you guys send that, and why did you? Why were you prompted?
Yeah, so it was March of last year, 2022. just given the passage of time, one of the hurdles we encountered was that even DNA degrades over time, and it's hard to find a suitable, complete profile. And just the extraction of a viable profile is difficult under the best circumstances. But Othram, through their technology, which I don't pretend to understand, they were able to take the portion of the remains that we shipped to them, frankly, and they were able to apply their technology to get a good DNA sample from that. So this is just technology that wasn't available for decades.
And just to confirm, when they exactly find that DNA, then they look through a database on ancestry.com, you said?
Yes, my understanding is Othram, I'm not sure if they have partnerships or agreements with certain databases out there that people voluntarily contribute to. And I believe that ancestry.com, folks who submit to that are agreeing to some degree to have their profiles cross-checked. So really, honestly, if the family hadn't decided to participate in that,
That's the thing you're going to keep in remember all of this stuff too. If you don't want your DNA profile out there, and I would make the suggestion to not do these type of things. I just wouldn't want anybody having access to any type of my DNA type. These things like ancestry.com and these websites that do these, research and try to come up with, where your family goes back decades and years and years and years. They're taking your DNA, they're storing this in some type of data bank, and you have to keep in mind that could be used in any type of, case or, criminal thing, or, in some other entity. Myself, I just wouldn't want someone having access to my DNA profile. There's no need to that. The only people that I probably would allow to do that is, my parents or my medical, professionals. It's just my opinion and my theory on that.
Not sure where this investigation would be, but the stars just finally seem to align and come together.
Might be a better question for Chief or Detective. Why was this case important to you guys? I mean, it happened so long ago, but I know that we knew it as the Granby Girl case because we didn't know the identification. Why was it important to your?
I think any case is very important, and an unresolved case, we have several unresolved cases that, some are a higher priority than others. Obviously, a homicide is a very important case, and both my detectives always have cold cases sitting on their desk, or unresolved cases that they kind of just flip through, and we just keep trying to see if there's anything we've missed over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Again, as technology changed with DNA, so did how police reports are written. And, we're flipping through hand notes and handwritten reports and just trying to see if anybody missed anything. And if one officer doesn't see anything, we pass it to another one just to see if there's more we can follow up on.
If I can just add to that, Chief, as law enforcement and as prosecutors, there's just this inherent sense, this desire to solve the case. It's wanting to find out what happened. But from a human perspective, we know that this was a young lady, and that we didn't know at the time, but she had family. We didn't know whether she had children, but she did.
Guys, I just found out.
We're gonna get a
from
commercial.
finance that this
All right, we'll flip through that.
And we suspected that there may be people out there with lingering questions. One of the folks who's here with us this morning from our office is the chief of our victim witness advocate unit, Jackie Gaw, and working with Jackie over the years on the human element of these cases. It's more than just wanting to solve the case. It's about wanting to bring some closure, some justice, not complete closure yet, but and then getting to meet Matthew and his family this morning, and Lisa. It really brings us back to why we've been doing what we've been doing, why we've been working on this case for so many years, and why we haven't let it go, because it just gnaws at you. And I'm glad we're here where we are today, but we realize that we're not done yet. And that
I'm really glad for these, law enforcement officials that continue to search out answers to a lot of these cold cases. This goes back 45 years, and like they said, that, these type of cases, what they'll do is over the years is kind of pass them along to get some fresh eyes on it, to see if they can, maybe a different angle or different information that they may have missed in the initial reporting, and they just never give up. And I think that's a really great thing, and that's really what you're seeing here. This case back from 1978 now has somewhat some closure. They can at least have identified the young woman that unfortunately had her life taken, and this is now going to open up some more possible leads to who could have done this. And right now they are saying that her late husband, is a person of interest. So maybe the conclusion comes that it is him, but it's so hard because there's no definitive evidence at this point. But like I said, through the power of DNA, that this family now has some closure, which is fantastic.
There's more to go.
I understand that you said that it's harder to extract DNA after it's been a very long time. Is there any possible way, do you know, of finding the potential DNA of whoever committed the homicide, or is that essentially impossible by this point?
Well, as I said, in previous years we took a look at some of the clothing that was associated with Patricia's remains. There were some other biological specimens located, some hairs, for example, that are currently being analyzed for potential DNA purposes. Wow. The mere fact that someone's hair may have been on her clothing would not necessarily mean that person did or didn't kill her, but those are some potential avenues that we're still exploring. I'd say it's probably an uphill battle at this point, but again, we're overturning every stone on this case.
You said you need the public's help. Can you just reiterate kind of what specifically you want the public's help for with leads in this case? Sure.
At this point, until a couple of months ago, we didn't even know who Patricia was. And in any investigation, knowing who the person who lost their life was, knowing who was in their circle, who was in their lives, that more often than not leads you to the person who had something to do with their death, or at least who knows something about their death. So anybody who knew Patricia even earlier in her life, or specifically around the time she was married to Gerald Coleman, anybody who knew Gerald Coleman either before, during, or after the time he was with Patricia, anybody who may have been a neighbor, an associate, a prison cellmate even. If Mr. Coleman or any other suspect or person of interest may have even let something slip once about Patricia, those dots may not have been connected until people now know who we're dealing with. So it could be something seemingly slight or insignificant, but to us, it might really mean something. And specifically, Laura Holmes. Laura Holmes is a critical link in this case. She's one of the last people that we can tell to have seen Patricia alive, and the circumstances very near in time to when she went missing. Again, we've tried to track her down so far. No luck. We don't know if she's in the area. We don't know if she's deceased, but any family members she may have had, even they might have some information. So again, it's Patricia Coleman, it's Laura Holmes, Gerald Coleman, anybody who knows anything about them. Even if you were just neighbors, classmates at some point, please give us a call.
Yeah.
Laura Holmes was where the Matthew and News 5 was dropped off.
Yes.
Now, what relation do we know did she have to Patricia? Was she family? Was she a hired babysitter?
Captain, can you address that?
It's a little unclear what it seems a casual acquaintance would probably be the broadest category. It doesn't seem like a close friend or anything like that. But again, we don't have a whole lot of information about that, so that's a thing that we're trying to find out.
And I'm sorry, where did she live? Where did Laura Holmes live?
Was that 8 Taylor Street?
8 Taylor Street in Chicopee.
Yep.
Did you say she made a report?
So if anybody's wondering, this is out in the western part of Massachusetts that this crime happened 45 years ago.
Yes, she was expecting Patricia and or Gerald to be back within a couple of hours. And I believe after roughly 48 hours, after about 2 days went by, Ms. Holmes realized that something had gone askew, and she contacted the authorities, and then DCF got involved at that point.
So we got Dr. Bob in the house tonight. Dr. Bob, how are you? Thanks for checking in. Dr. Bob says, I wonder if she'll be exhumed and reburied in a family plot or her parents or family members. This is very important to the family, even if they never find out who did it. I don't know if you caught earlier in the press conference, they did say that there was just some remains. Yeah. And I'm not too sure, but that is a very good, a very good question. Someone that had their gravestone just, unidentified or unmarked, it would, probably be the most proper thing to bury them along with the family or make some proper arrangements for Patricia to honor her. So yeah, that's a really great point, Dr. Bob.
So did that not make Patricia a missing person?
Well, I believe it would have. I'm not sure. As I said, we checked the databases. There was no official report, as far as we can tell, that she was ever reported missing by anyone locally.
Interesting.
My understanding is that when some additional time went by, Patricia's parents, who lived in the New Jersey area, reached out to authorities. We're trying to track down some old records on that front. So eventually, obviously, her family, her parents realized that they weren't hearing from her anymore. But locally, we can't find any reports of her going missing or having been reported missing. And one might expect that your own spouse would report you missing.
The best way to.
All right, that's basically going to end that video there, but that gives some closure, or somewhat some closure to Patricia Tucker. Has been identified after 45 years through the power of DNA in that cold case in Granby, Massachusetts. So it's a really great thing that that's happening, and it seems that the Granby Police Department is going to continue to search leads in this case and try to get full closure to possibly who might have done this crime, and really give that family the complete closure. And like I said, I hope Patricia's family gives her a proper burial now, and honors her life, because she definitely deserves that. All right, guys. So we're going to move on to our next topic here. There has been an update in the Delphi murders, and this says that Kentucky detective investigating possible connection between 2011 double murder and Delphi case. So this is out of Boone County, Kentucky. I'm going to read a little bit of an article here, and then I do have a short, not really short, but about a 15-minute video that will get everybody caught up on where this case was and where it is now. And then we're going to end the show with the Alec Murdaugh juror number 530, giving kind of a tell-all as to where they were in that case, what ultimately made them decide that Alec was guilty. And we can go on and listen to that too. So we'll go back here to the article. So Boone County, Kentucky, cold case detectives at Boone County Sheriff Office in Kentucky are investigating any possible connection between an unsolved double murder in 2011 and the 2017 killings of Abby Williams and Libby German in Delphi, Indiana. The case in Kentucky that remains unsolved is the brutal murder of Bill and Peggy Stevenson. The 78-year-old couple was found dead inside their home on May 29th, 2011. Sorry, my stutter is crazy tonight. My stutter is really crazy tonight. I just got a chat that came up. Round the World says, thanks for showing this. Well, thank you for joining in. I appreciate you kind of here on an off night tonight. But, I was telling my audience, if you're just jumping in on the show, that I'm going to really commit this year to try to live stream as many nights as I can and really start getting this channel to kick off. So Around the World, I appreciate you chiming in this evening. Thank you so much. We'll go back to the article here. It says, Bill was a minister and Peggy played the organ at a local church. No arrests have been made in this case. Detective Coy Cox, that's a cool name, Coy Cox, is a cold case detective in Boone County and has been investigating the case for years. He said the crime scene investigators found initially was staged, changed, moved, and altered. We know from the postmortem injury that the killer and killers remained on the scene or came back to the scene anywhere from at least 3 hours after the murders up to 8 hours, Cox explained. They were even able to change something in every room of the residence to where we actually had a scene that was not a crime scene, but it was also a scene that those killers wanted us to find. It goes on to say detectives found an unknown DNA profile at the scene, which has been entered into this CODIS database. How exactly the Stevensons were killed are not released publicly, but Cox described their case as death as blunt force trauma. For years, Cox received tips on the case, but said he received several in the fall of 22, suggesting a connection between Stevenson's case and the Delphi murders. The tips kept coming in, and there was a moment where we got some information that particularly we thought could have had a relation to our case, Cox said. Cox wouldn't reveal what the tip was. However, it led Cox to travel to Fort Wayne area to interview a truck driver who had a connection to Bill Stevenson. Cox said that the man was fully cooperative. We took items that could be evaluated for evidentiary purposes, and I will say, and I will not say what those are. Based on what we have right now, Cox said they don't see a connection with the Delphi murders. However, he admits both have very rare similarities in their crime scenes. A lot of those things, the staging, multiple victims, spending time post-mortem, Cox explained, a lot of things make these kind of cases like 1% kind of cases that you see. In May 22, Fox obtained court records that describe the Delphi crime scene. The murder was the murder likely took a souvenir from the crime scene, according to the document, and it appeared the girls' bodies were moved and staged. Cox made it clear that he does not believe Richard Allen, the man accused of the Delphi murders, had anything to do with the Stevensons murders. However, during one of Allen's first court hearings, Carroll County prosecutor Nicholas McClellan said in court that there was a good reason to believe Allen is not the only one involved. Could one of those people have had a connection to the Stevenson case? That's something Cox and his partner continue to investigate. Cox said that he shared all the information he's gathered in Indiana with the Indiana State Police. ISP said it could not comment on the story because of the gag order imposed in the Richard Allen case. Detectives have since Detective said since this information has come to light, his office has received numerous tips and hopes that people continue to provide any information they can. You can both reach Boone County Sheriff's office in the tip line here. So they have a little hyperlink there. You can get in there. So let's do this. Let's pull up the video that I have, the Delphi murders, kind of where we were, where we're at, and go through that. And then we'll finish up with Alec Murdaugh. All right.
Today is not a day to celebrate.
Real quick, this is from the Law and Crime Network. Shout out to them. Way through here.
But the arrest of Richard M. Allen of Delphi on 2 counts of murder is sure a major step in leading to the conclusion of this long-term and
I'm going to be eating a Chipotle burrito and testing it on my NutriSense glucose monitor.
complex investigation.
Welcome back to Sidebar here on Law and Crime. I'm Anjanette Levy. It's been 5.5 years since 2 teenage girls, Abigail Williams and Liberty German, were murdered in Delphi, Indiana. There were a lot of people who wondered whether these murders would ever be solved. And it really is a case that's captivated the attention of people across the country. Now, a local man, his name is Richard Allen, is charged with the crimes, and he has entered a not guilty plea. Indiana State Police led a task force that fielded more than 70,000 tips that were bringing in information about the case. So let's listen to what the superintendent of the Indiana State Police had to say about the case on Monday.
Thanks to literally hundreds of media outlets that have been steadfast in reporting and keeping the memories of Abby and Libby front and center. Many of you in the room have developed relationships with me personally, and you know I always have a personal perspective, and today's no different. But from a very personal perspective, you all have provided inspiration and support, even while oftentimes frustrated with us and me. You continue to encourage the efforts. And you too believe that one day we would all be here participating and sharing this news.
And joining me to discuss the arrests and the investigation are the hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast. They are Anya Kane and Kevin Greenlee. Anya and Kevin, welcome to Sidebar. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Anya, I'll start with you. What got you guys to really start looking into this case?
Yeah, so we were a married couple. We were living in Brooklyn for a while at the start of the podcast. then we made the decision to move back to Indiana. And actually, one of Kevin's relatives was very interested in the case, very passionate about it, and sort of suggested that we look into it, essentially, noting how important it is for the community here in Indiana. So we basically, after that, started looking into it and started kind of, basically skimming the surface, trying to find, interesting angles. And eventually we ended up hitting, some different aspects of the case that I think proved to be sort of new information that we were able to bring forward. So that's sort of how we got started, though. Just sort of hearing that it was of interest to people. And I mean, it's certainly of interest to us. I mean, 2 little girls going out for a walk and never coming back, and then having the killer, possibly on audio and video and not having it solved is just sort of, it's very outraging. So I think that.
And I remember when some of that video was released, and I'm sure they were just hoping that somebody would call in with some type of information that was helpful. So Kevin, talk to me a little bit about how you and Anya started investigating the case.
Well, we were fortunate because we had earlier investigated another case in Indiana, an older case actually dating back to 1978, the Burger Chef murders. And in the course of our investigation of that case, we'd become familiar with the law enforcement community here. We'd developed some sources. So when we got interested in Delphi, we were able to go to some people who were able to point us in some right directions and give us some ideas on some things to potentially look into and some people to talk to. And that was very helpful to us.
And so where did you go from there?
Basically, we started off more of with an analysis focus. One question we had is, are there other double homicides of underage children in parks that we can look at and maybe draw some conclusions, or at least have an intelligent speculation about? And so we talked about things like that. We talked about things like we released one episode critiquing the Indiana State Police for some of what we felt was confusing messaging around the 2 sketches. So we were kind of really more on the outside looking in and kind of coming closer. But I think as we were releasing reports, we tried to be very, objective and professional and journalistic about it. And I think people sort of appreciated that. And I would say, then we started hearing things more behind the scenes at a certain point and went forward with that. And we ended up getting some pretty important documents through a bit of a stroke of luck. And that came after, so Wish TV here in Indianapolis, they broke the story linking a man named Kegan Kline to an Anthony Schatz account that Indiana State Police had released, basically saying that this man is accused of being an online predator. And, we believe in some ways that is linked to Delphi, essentially, based on what the police are saying. So we were able, through just a clerical error, essentially, to get a hold of some police transcripts of interviews with Kegan Kline. And we redacted those and published them and discussed them on our show. And I think that brought some understanding to, at that point, what was a, lead, and perhaps like the most important lead at that point that police were looking into, I would say.
And it's my understanding that you all happened upon some information, and maybe happened upon is not the proper terminology, but you discovered or came to learn about some information that was helpful to the investigation and generated some leads.
Yeah, we were told by people pretty high up, basically, that our reporting had generated actionable leads and tips in the case. And
it's really good.
We don't know what became of those, or if they ended up being important, or if they ended up just being something to maybe cross off the list. So we're certainly not taking credit for any sort of development. But it was certainly heartening to know that perhaps our reporting proved to be somewhat helpful. And, and one thing that we do, I think people sometimes think that, since we've gotten a few scoops in the case, that we tend to run anything or just kind of run with what we have. But we often, if there's a case to be made for information being harmful to the investigation, if released, or, dangerous to people, I mean,
that's one thing that I've always kind of prided myself here on this channel, is that I try to give very, correct or informal information, things that are out there that are relevant to the case. We talk a lot here about Brian Koberger on this channel, and I try not to get into the conspiracy theories. And believe me, I see a lot of the comments, and I appreciate all that because everybody has their own right and their freedom to speech and what what their theory is. And that's what I want on this channel. I want people to be opinionated. I want my fans to be opinionated. I want the people that watch this channel to be opinionated. That's what we're here to do. We're here to look at the evidence, look at the items in the investigation, look at the people that are involved, and give our opinion about it, and give our point of view of what they want, what it is. I mean, and but the thing here is I always try to stick to what I have. What is the evidence that's there? What has been proven? I can't go off something that says Jerry's uncle's daughter told me, that unless there's some hardcore evidence that can follow up and give me a better lead and confirm that conversation or evidence, then I'll run with it. If you can give me something and say, hey, here's the person, or here's the item, or here's where they were, something like that, then I can run with it.
There's certainly a number of scenarios you can imagine where it's perhaps better to hold back for the time being instead of just reporting it. And that's something we have always done and have always tried to do. And so that's something I think that has made it a good, I think people trust us to kind of not just publish everything at once and possibly endanger different people or the case itself.
Of course. And Kevin, can you tell us about that information that you all were able to report that was helpful possibly in generating some what you guys called actionable leads or tips?
Well, we were able to get our hands on a copy of a police interrogation that the police did with someone who ran the Anthony Shots social media account. And that interrogation transcript contained a wealth of information about the person who ran this account, about the methods he used. It had examples of some of his chats with people. And so our understanding is that us putting that information out there and publicizing it helped other people to come forward, perhaps with, and I'm speculating, but perhaps with stories about their own interactions with Anthony Shots.
Interesting.
So let's talk about how you all learned that an arrest had been made. Did you hear, here in the news business, sometimes you hear rumblings, things you might not be able to report right away or get, confirmation of. Did you have any inkling whatsoever that an arrest might be coming?
Yeah, we definitely did. And it was one of those things where
if you hate wearing bras, then you're going to want to listen up. 10 years ago, I gave up my regular bra.
I think that we try to prioritize what is good for the case and the public's understanding of the case, and not, let's get a scoop out of this. Because if we get something from a very credible source, definitely somebody that we totally trust, but if we're not able to sort of officially confirm it or get multiple people saying the same things, we're reluctant to run with it, just in case there's a misunderstanding. And especially with something as sensitive as this man has been arrested, that could be, if it turns out, if we report that and it's wrong, that would be devastating to the families and the communities, and we would be doing some unspeakable harm, even if it was, just a mistake. And so we sort of, we heard it, I believe, like
on Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. And
it wasn't announced to the public until Friday. So it was kind of surreal for us to have a day and a half or so there where we knew that there had been an arrest in the case, but no one else did.
We couldn't confirm it, but we were pretty sure there had been an arrest. And we were pretty sure that we knew that it was going to be somebody who we'd never heard of. I mean, not on our radar, not on anybody's radar that we know of at this point. So we were kind of just in this place of trying to run it down and get information. And then it did come out, and we were happy that, okay, a press conference is scheduled. We can learn some more information then.
And I was going to ask you about that, if you had heard the name Richard Allen, but Kevin, it sounds like you guys, this was like a big shocker, I guess.
Yeah, the first time we heard the news was on Friday morning when we learned that that was the name of the person who had been arrested. He was completely off our radar.
What do you know about the motive here? I mean, I think about two teenage girls, leaving their house, as you said, going out and not coming back. I mean, I know one person could accomplish this, but they've also said, they're open to hearing about other information that other people could have been involved. So, what are your thoughts on that part of this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, from a motive, I don't think we can know just yet, but I mean, we can say a few things. We reported on a search warrant of a property owned by the man who owned the property where the girls' bodies were found, and that spoke to a very bloody crime scene and just a very upsetting idea that somebody would do that to these two girls. And but that speaks to like a level of heinousness, I think, in this case. And I don't know what we could say about motive there, but I mean, either way, this was just it was a despicable and cowardly act, I guess, is what I would say. And as for leaving it open about like, are there other people involved? It's one of those things where the fact, typically when you see an arrest, I would imagine in most cases you have the police being like, all right, now we're ready to go to trial. Today we heard something a little different. It's, we made an arrest. This is a huge step. We're all very proud of this, that we got to this point, and this is great news for the case. But also, don't stop getting in contact with us. The case is not over. It was like, oh, feel free to send in tips. It was very much, we're still going at this. It's an active investigation, and to the point where we're not going to talk about it publicly too much because that could jeopardize it. And that tells us that there's at the very least an interest in either other figures or certain key aspects of information that investigators are, I guess, still looking to run down.
Kevin, tell us what I feel like the victims in these cases, they often get lost. What have you learned about the two girls who were murdered in this case?
They were two wonderful, intelligent little girls who had a whole lifetime ahead of them, a lifetime that would have been full of special moments for them and for their loved ones. And it was all taken away from them and from those who loved them in the blink of an eye back in 2017. And that's something we always try to keep in the front of our minds. And today, seeing the family of those little girls at that press conference and just thinking about what this moment must mean to them, to finally know that they're going to be beginning to see some real answers, that was really heartening.
And I will say that, like, I think their legacy lives on here in Delphi and, around the world. People deeply care about these girls, their families. These girls were deeply loved. And there's a park in their memory here in Delphi that sort of is a bit of a legacy, a nice, peaceful place where people can go and sort of reflect on the positive impact that these girls have left behind. And you also have, they have scholarship funds in their name. So there's a real sense of Libby and Abby being very much present here today in this town of Delphi, and they're remembered. They're not forgotten, and they're not just remembered for the horrible way in which they died, but they're remembered for how they lived, who they were, and just a very positive legacy left behind. Unlike whoever is convicted of killing them will leave a legacy of just destruction and hate. And I think it's important for people to, as you said, just keep Abby and Libby in their thoughts and keep them at the center of this.
Most definitely. Well, Anya Carter and Kevin Greenlee, hosts of the Murder Sheet podcast, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
All right, guys, there is some update on Delphi. So they are looking at some other cases, particularly one in that area, and seeing if there's any type of connection to that. So really great informative information there. And we're going to get to the third segment here, but I just want to make sure that everybody hits the like button. I would, smash that like button. I would appreciate it. And if you are new here or you are a current subscriber, the best thing that you can do is turn that bell notification on. So every time I go live or drop a new video, you'll be informed so you can come over and interact with that. I am a live streamer, so I do live shows and my set nights are Sunday evenings and Wednesday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But, if I have some nights in between, I am going to stream because I'm giving my all this year. I'm going for it. I really want to push the channel this year, like I've been saying, and put in the work. So, and then what I do is once the live streams end, I'll download them, break them up into smaller segments, push them out to the algorithm, or I may just release the full episode for a replay. But let's go into the final segment this evening, and we're going to talk about Alec Murdaugh. There is a juror now that, I just shared the wrong screen. Sorry. There is a juror now that is talking and giving kind of his story and some insight to how that jury room was. Let's play through this from the Law and Crime Network, and this is known as Juror 530. And we'll
What was your juror number?
530.
530. Okay.
Yes.
His name is James.
When you first called up for jury duty, did you realize it was going to be this case?
And we're gonna get
so fat. Brendan, you're not fat. It's the shirt.
Sorry, guys. We'll get
Look at
through
Nate.
it.
So I wasn't positive, but we were given a questionnaire. So a lot of those questions kind of pertain to the case in some way. So I didn't know for certain.
We got a chat, and Wings says, glad you're doing well, B. Enjoy the crime stuff. Absolutely. Thank you so much, man. We did a pivot on the channel. It's proving some success here. I got a big show here on Thursday night. If anybody doesn't know, we have the Drunk Turkey show coming over. We're going to hang out, and we're going to talk the Brian Kohberger case. So you're not going to want to miss that. Have the reminder up. That's going to be at 8:30 on Thursday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. Come over and check that out. Thank you so much for being here, man. Appreciate that.
But
We're
I
gonna play through here.
think that it was going to be this case.
When you finally got to court and you realized it was, what kind of were your thoughts?
I don't really think I had any thoughts. It was just, I was there to do my civic duty, and I really didn't think that I would be chosen. I had heard that there was 900 some people that were given, the questionnaire and everything. So out of 900, I didn't really think that I'd be chosen.
Was the Murdaugh case something that everybody talked about around here, or was it something that was just kind of something that happened? And I don't know, what is your take on it?
I think that it was talked about a fair amount, but I actually work over in Charleston, and I've been up in Clemson at school. So I haven't really been in the area for like the past 4 years. So,
just to give some context too, a lot of the times that jurors will come out and talk after is they may be seeking interest for someone to write a book, to give their experience on this, on a particular trial that they were on, a very well publicized trial. So they will come out and start giving, these type of media interviews, basically to shop their story around to write a book. I mean, I get it.
Something you hear
Comes
about,
with the
but
territory.
it's not something that I have so many other things going on. It's not something that I dedicated a lot of my time talking about or paying attention to.
You said you went to Clemson? Is
Yes.
that right? Oh, okay. So you graduated?
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask how old you are?
22.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. So you're around Paul Murdaugh's age.
Yeah. Well, I would have been the same age as him in 2021, as far as whenever he passed away.
So let's talk about the verdict. We've heard reports you guys deliberated for 2 hours and 50 minutes. I went upstairs last night to figure out what was going on, and somebody said, we asked them if they wanted dinner, and they said, no, we'll be done in 10 minutes. So it went fairly quickly for
Wow.
a 6-week trial. Can you take us inside the room a little bit?
Well, I will say that whenever, we had asked if we wanted dinner, we were actually rounding up our last few questions that anybody had. So it wasn't that we already had an answer. It was more so that we knew that the questions that we had answers to. We just wanted to talk through them and make sure they made sense.
Interesting.
So we just needed that extra 10, 30 minutes. I think it was about 30 minutes that we actually took. And it wasn't that, we had already had the decision, but we knew that we were right there at it.
Be right back, guys.
So the whole 2 hours and 50 minutes, what went on in the beginning, just going through the instructions or?
Well, we had a pretty good idea of what the instructions were just because the judge read them to us. But I would say when we first got in there, what was important to us was just to see where everybody was at and make sure if everybody was on the same page. Maybe we just need to talk through things, make sure that it all makes sense to everybody. But We did have a few that weren't on the same page.
I am back.
We did like an anonymous vote at the beginning just to see where everybody was at. And once we found that out, we kind of just opened the floor for anybody, whoever had questions, and then we would talk through those. We had the evidence in the other room. So if we had questions regarding a certain thing, we were able to refer back, and we just went one question at a time. We didn't want anybody to not be able to say anything, so we did take turns speaking. So anybody was talking over anybody. If anybody left, we made sure to wait until they could come back. We didn't want anybody to be left out or anybody to miss any piece of information. I think that's all.
So it doesn't sound like it was contentious at all.
I think more so than somebody being dead set on one thing or the other. We all, I think, were very good in taking all the evidence and not jumping to any conclusions, but rather taking all the evidence and seeing where it led us. Whenever we got to the end and there were some people that weren't convinced, I don't think it was so much that they knew that he was not guilty as they just weren't sure yet. They might not have known answers to certain questions. So that's when it really took that 2 hours to kind of walk through something they might not understand, go back to the evidence, go back and see what somebody said about something and answer those questions for those people. Like I said, it wasn't that they knew that he was not guilty, but they just weren't sure.
Yeah, and that's, I just want to pop in really quick and pause this. The thing when you have a high profile murder case like this and the jury goes back and, they come back within a couple of hours, which usually probably not good for the defense in most cases. I was shocked when I was actually home watching the jury. I was on the jury watch. I was watching Emily Baker's channel, and I was doing the jury watch with her. And then all of a sudden they said like under 3 hours, and it was like 3.5 hours, the jury was coming back. And I was like, wow, that's quick. And that's usually not good for the defense. So they pretty much knew right away that Alec was guilty. But like you said, there was a lot of sorted questions, some things that they wanted to make sure that they went back and referred to that evidence. And, just to make 100% sure before they came in and gave their final verdict, because obviously you do not want to put someone away for the rest of their life. If you are unsure, you have to look at all of the reasonable doubt in a case to make sure that there is no reasonable doubt before you pass in that verdict form. So I'm going to pull this up. Wings is saying it is really interesting for the viewers to have a look into the complexities of investigation. As you know, B, my background was a part of the judicial process, and having you cover all aspects is great. Wings, thank you so much. He says, gives people a 360 view of why and how things are covered and adjudicated. Absolutely, man. You have to look at all aspects. You have to think of all of the aspects in every case, and you have to look at everything and just gather facts. I've said that from here when I, started doing the true crime, and I think with every topic that I've covered on my channel, I've always tried to, or I always have, covered it with integrity and respect. And, I've always said this as well too. There are a lot of channels on here that speak true crime and talk true crime, and they say, "Oh no, he's guilty. No, he's innocent. No, he's guilty." You can't do that. You have to always presume innocence until proven guilty in a court of law. Every single person that is a suspect that is going through a case has the right to a fair trial. I've always said that on this channel. As much as I have my opinions about how I think about a certain suspect or a case, they are always presumed innocent until proven guilty. So yeah, man, that's a great insight there.
And
I
they
appreciate
needed
that, man.
the answers to those questions, and we were able to get those.
So it's like a 9-3 vote, first vote.
Yes, it was.
But I think the really, and I'm sorry, I want to pause this again. And I think the really fascinating thing is I love hearing behind the scenes stuff. I've never been called to a trial, but I've gone to jury duty before. But to actually see, how that process rolls out, especially in a high profile case, to have a juror come out and sit and tell his or her story, I think is really great.
And then slowly, how many votes did you take?
We took one at the beginning. We, like I said, went through all the questions that anybody had, and then at the end we took another vote. And we not only took that out of the vote, but we went back
I want to
through
welcome all
beginning
the
to
new
end
viewers
about
that
all
are
the
jumping
details
in
and the
right
facts,
now.
just to make sure.
We're doing the we're walking through the Alec Murdaugh trial. We have a juror 530 or 503. I forgot the number. His name is, he goes by James, and he's basically just giving kind of the behind the scenes of how that jury worked to convict Alec Murdaugh.
That, you know, somebody's story didn't differ from somebody else's. We were all pretty sure that we knew what had happened, and we knew who had pulled the trigger. So then we took a vote at the end, and then we took a moment to gather ourselves. We wanted to make sure that everybody was
100%.
They knew what they were going to say as far as what they thought and what their vote was going to be. We didn't want anybody to have any questions. We didn't want anybody to feel nervous about what they were saying or that they weren't sure. And we wanted everybody to make sure that that's what they said because that's how they felt. We didn't want anybody to feel peer pressured or like they had to say something.
What were some of the questions that people had? Because obviously this was a 6-week trial. It was supposed to be 3, and you weren't allowed to take minutes.
Yeah, it was very tough, but I will say that everyone in the jury pool, they paid very close attention. That was actually one of our concerns towards the beginning, was not having anything to, you know, take down notepads. But in the jury room, we were able to have.
You may have tried drop shipping in the past, and you might have started to get sales. Then maybe you started to see deposits coming into your bank account.
Paper and pen. So if we had any questions, that's kind of where we would write down our questions, and we saved them all the way until deliberation. A lot of times those questions were answered throughout the trial, so those questions didn't make it to deliberation because they were answered by another witness or somebody else. But we were able to write back there, so we would just have to, you know, wait for one of those 15-minute breaks and then jot it down real quick. So that's kind of how we got through that, of not having anything to write it down.
That's really interesting. What were some of the questions people had? I mean, were there some the 3 were thinking, did they have the same questions, or were they just things they couldn't remember? Can you give me an example?
So I think that one of the questions were regarding kind of the gun situation. I think that there was maybe a couple people that weren't very familiar with firearms. So it was, and I completely understand, it's a little hard to understand how you can match a casing to a gun if you don't have that gun. And I think it was important to, you know, realize that they weren't matching a casing to a gun. They were matching a casing to another casing that had been shot by the same gun. And we knew that the gun that shot one of those casings had been seen by one of the witnesses that Paul was shooting that gun with his friend. So then you know that both those casings had been cycled through the same gun, and that casing was at the crime scene. So that's how you're able to place that gun at the crime scene and know that it's a family gun.
When you got out there and you know, did you look at him? What was that like?
So throughout the entire trial, one of the things that I wanted to do, just because I felt like it would benefit me, is watch both sides, both the prosecution and the defense, and see what their reactions were to certain things that were said. So my eyes were constantly going from prosecution to defense to the witness. You know, I wanted to see everybody's reactions and how people were taking things, what their responses were. So whenever we got out there to, you know, express what our verdict was, I wanted to watch and see how the defense and the defendant reacted. So I know that I'd heard somebody say that was in the audience that we never looked, but I know that for me, I looked at the defense. I wanted to see what the reaction was.
I wanted to say too that the thing that kind of scared me in all this, because I thought that just Alec Murdaugh had been guilty all along. That was just my opinion on that. Because the way that I looked at it was, you know, he lied about stealing money. He's lied to his family. He lied about taking drugs. Everything in his life basically became a lie. And the thing that kind of made me nervous was when there were reports, when the case was getting to get ready to wrap up, when Alec Murdaugh was on the stand, there were reports that a couple of the jurors were actually crying. And I was like, wow, they're sympathizing with this guy. But I almost wonder if they were crying knowing that this guy was so methodical, he was such a liar, and he's lying in front of them, that they actually felt, you know, obviously felt bad for his wife and child that were killed. You know, I think those were those tears that they were showing.
Anything that stood out?
I think that the only thing that stood out to me, and it wasn't shocking to me, but was that there was no reaction. It was just a straight face.
the kennel video.
Yeah, that was
How
huge.
important was that to you? And was it to you? Because to me, it seems to be the biggest part,
Yep.
or at least one of the biggest pieces of the state's case.
I think it's a very crucial piece, and I think that it's incredible timing as to when they were able to get it. And I think it's
Can you imagine if that TikTok video was never taken? This probably could have gone another way, because he's going to talk and stress about how important that TikTok video was. Incredible. That small, tiny piece of evidence is basically what convicted Alec Murdaugh in this. Now, I don't know that 100% sure, but it was a huge part of the evidence in this case.
incredible timing on Paul's part. I don't think that anyone would have ever known that he was down there if it wasn't for that video.
See? TikTok video.
I think that there's a lot of evidence that points towards Alex, but I feel like that does solidify it. He can't, deny that he was there at that point because there's a video that places him there. I think that it speaks a lot that somebody that couldn't speak, somebody that couldn't be a witness, was able to be a witness even after they had passed away.
I keep saying that the little detective, gathered a piece of evidence to help in his own murder investigation.
Yeah, right.
Unwittingly.
Yeah.
He was just trying to take a picture of Cash or a video of Cash's tail.
It's crazy.
Were there other pieces of evidence that you thought were really critical?
I think that every piece of evidence
Wow.
was critical. I've heard a lot about when was the point that you really felt like, you were going to sway one way or the other. And it was very important to me to not make that decision prematurely. So I would say that I never made a decision until after both closing arguments.
Wow.
After I knew that I had all the evidence, I felt confident in making a decision, because
Wow.
I think that if you make a decision before you're able to see all the pieces of the puzzle, you may have jumped over, you may have gotten in front of yourself. I think that for me, I am familiar with firearms. So being able to place both of those guns there, and although it was not, the shot shells were not a match to either of the shotguns, it was very interesting that one of the shotguns that happened to be one of Alex's favorite was missing. So that was kind of important to me. It was important to me that they could place both those guns there based off of the matched markings on the shot shells and spent casings. I'd say another piece of evidence that was important to me was his own time on the witness stand. It was just, there was a lot of things that you were able to gather based off of what he said, how he said it, how he was reacting.
Did he ever make eye contact with you? I kept seeing him look over. I didn't know if he was looking at just a few of the jurors, or did you ever?
So, like I said, I was constantly looking at prosecution, defense, and the witness on the stand throughout the entire trial. Being able to make eye contact with somebody is, I don't know why, but I'll make eye contact with people a lot, especially during the trial. And it was something that I noticed that he very rarely ever made eye contact with me. And I don't know if it was on purpose or if it was just because I always sat all the way on the end. I was kind of away from the rest of the jury once we lost a few alternates. But that was something that I noticed, is just that we didn't make very much eye contact.
Interesting. Did you see tears from him? A lot of people, I saw them sometimes, but obviously I'm either watching on television or I'm in the courtroom and his back was headed to me.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see tears?
Yes, I did. I know that some people may have said that he did or didn't, but whenever like I said, I watched a lot of people. There was 6 weeks worth of time where I was just watching people and listening to people. And I would say that there was several times that he was crying. Whether they were genuine or not, I don't know. But I would say that he was crying at certain parts of the trial.
Did you believe anything that he said?
I think that he is... I think that he's good at being able to talk to people. And I think that part of the way that he is able to be so good at talking to people
Master
is that
manipulator.
he's convincing. And I think that whenever he's convincing
He's a
himself
narcissistic
as well. And I think he's able to do that because he
sociopath.
often meshes the truth with a lie. So I think that there was some truth. And I think that it's true that he did love his family.
He killed him.
But I think that he also mixes lies in there. And what those are and where you differentiate those, I'm not sure. But I think that at times he was telling.
1, 2.
Got another commercial.
Oh, didn't even
Hope
feel
everybody's
it.
still out there. Appreciate you all. joining this evening.
Was there a specific
Kind of off
point
night for
where you
me,
thought- I mean,
streaming.
obviously, we know he was telling the truth about being down at the kennels, but maybe you felt obviously he didn't tell the truth when he talked about what leaving the kennels, because I remember a specific portion of that testimony where Creighton Waters asked him, well, what did you say to Maggie when you left the kennels, or did you just get on the golf cart and go? Did you catch that when he said things like, well, I would have said, you know, if he were leaving the kennels, I would have said. Did you pick up
Right.
on
Well,
that?
he was saying, you know, I can't remember what I said, but I would have said, you know,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. He said, well, I would have said bye or something, because I think they were trying to establish how much time he was down there after that video before he went back. And he was saying, well, you know, I would have said bye. I wouldn't have just hauled back to the house. Again, I forget what your question was originally, but
Well, was there anything that in particular that stood out about that? It was probably a bad question on my part. Like, I just noticed that he got really quiet when asked about, well, what did you say to Maggie? Did you say bye, or did you he said something like, I'm out of here, or something like that?
I think that it was pointed out throughout the trial, well, particularly that portion of the trial, that there's a lot of things that he was able to remember vividly, and there was a lot of things that he was not able to recall. And that was something that I paid attention to, because some of the things that he could remember vividly are things that I wouldn't remember tomorrow. And then some of the things that he couldn't remember vividly were things that I wouldn't forget in 10 years. So and whether that's just a difference on what's important to who, you know, whether him and I differ on what we would find priority to remember or what we would kind of, you know, forget about.
But another 15 minutes left in the show here. I want to thank everybody this evening, you know, for coming over and hanging out on an off night. I know I don't normally stream on a Tuesday. My solid nights are Sunday and Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just want to remind anybody, if you're a new watcher here on the channel, please make sure to subscribe. I just checked my channel statistics. I don't usually do this, but I'm so close. Let's take a look. I am currently at 2298. So I'm only two subscribers away from hitting 2,300 subscribers on the channel. I really do appreciate that. Appreciate all the new people that have come over and checked out my videos and, you know, hung out here on the live streams. Thursday night's going to be a huge show. I have the Drunk Turkeys coming over. We're going to talk Brian Koberger. That'll be at 8:30, and I plan on doing about a 2-hour show with them. We're going to smash it all the way through and have a really good time. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of great information. I love to hear what their insights on that, and I think that it's going to be a great show. I already have the reminder up for that. You can go over there on my main page on my channel, hit the reminder button so you are informed. The most important thing, if you're a current subscriber or a subscriber that's new here, please make sure to turn on that bell notification, because I am a live streamer. So I do live streams, and then I will download those episodes the next day for replay or split them up into smaller segments. So that's my advertising, guys. If anybody wants to support the channel, you can go down there, hit the join button. I have subscriptions for $1.99 a month. All that money gets recirculated back into the channel to support this channel and keep it growing. All right, let's play out the rest of this video and wrap it up.
I don't know. I don't know every person in the world, but I found it interesting, some of the things that he was able to remember. And
real quick, I'm just going to pull this up. Wings in the chat. He's an old buddy of mine. Wings, I hope you're doing well. And thanks for hanging out this evening. Says it's always interesting to have a glimpse of the psychology of offenders like this. The jurors have a very difficult task in separating facts that come from the defense and prosecution. Yeah, and it's also very interesting to see how they think through that process of being on the jury. You know, like he was saying, he didn't make a determination right away because he didn't want the information or the facts. He wanted to see all the facts in the case and not let that predetermined innocent or guilty in his head to cloud his judgment. So I give this juror actually a lot of credit to sticking, you know, to that philosophy. Let's hear all of the evidence and put all the puzzle pieces together in the end, so I make the right decision for this person. And I think it's a very admirable thing that he did that, because some people right away, they make a predetermination when they get in there. They might hear, you know, a good 30 minutes of the case and they've already made their mind up, and it clouds their true judgment in the case.
Some things that he was
So was the testimony, him taking the stand, did that kind of clinched it for you? I mean, you said you didn't make up your mind until the end, until the closing arguments were finished. But was that something major that really was part of your decision?
Like I said earlier, I think that all the evidence, all the witnesses, they were all a major part of the trial. Whether one weighed more than other, I think that there were some things that you could kind of rely on a little bit better. Whenever he did get on the stand, I know that it was very.
So Wings just chimed in again. He said, doing well, my man, working hard, enjoying the stream. I've taken part in some big trials. Some were successful and some not. But the process, I'm glad that you are highlighting. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. I appreciate you. Thank you, buddy.
Abnormal.
Good to see you,
I've never
man. I
been
hope you
a
are
juror before, and I've
well.
never
You're a
sat
good
through
dude.
trial
You're a
before,
good
but I
dude.
did know that the defendant taking the stand was very abnormal. I wouldn't say that at that point that sealed the deal or anything. I just took what he said. I tried to weigh it both ways. I tried to see if what he was saying and if it was the truth made sense, then that would make sense. But then I ran it the other way, and if what he was saying just didn't add up, then it didn't add up. So I tried to do that with each piece of evidence. I tried to run it both ways as to if it was true and if it wasn't true, if I could rely on it or if I couldn't, and then which one made more sense and which one, kind of how they were saying about the circumstantial evidence, did it all point to the same conclusion? Which one of these, whether it was the truth or whether it wasn't and wasn't reliable, which one points to the conclusion and fits the story better?
How important was Dr. Kinsey's testimony?
He talked about a lot and he's very knowledgeable. I would say that he was, a very big part of the case, as well as, a majority of the team. I found it very interesting, some of the things that he talked about, just because it was things that I was interested in. I think it was very interesting as to how he walked through the crime scene, things that he noticed, things that he really, dug into, and things that really caught his eye. But, whether he was
Stop tackling your boobs. The most supportive Cammy is here.
Guys.
Extremely, the biggest part of the case or something like that. I think that he was extremely important and definitely gave us a lot of good information.
Did you ever feel like the prosecution was getting way too into the weeds with financial stuff? That's something that we thought they were getting too into the weeds with. Did that bother you guys? Because sometimes you guys looked a little bored when, not you specifically, but some of the jurors.
I will say that it's a whole new experience for me just for the last part of that question. So I don't think that I was really bored. A lot of times, maybe I was a little uncomfortable for sitting there for a while, but I was still interested. I thought that, it's a very interesting situation, very interesting case. But as far as for what your original question was, I don't think they got too far into the weeds because I don't know. That's a tough one for me to answer. It's all evidence, whether it was just for the motive. The financial stuff doesn't, it's not a factor on whether he was behind the trigger or not, to me. That was something they didn't have to prove. They didn't have to prove motive, but they felt that it was important for us to, see that evidence. So anything that, in my opinion, anything that they put on the table for us to hear, it's important to hear because the judge has made the decision that that's important for us to hear. So I personally don't think that they got too far into the weeds, but somebody else may think differently than me.
Sure. Did you have any feelings about the lawyers on both sides? Did you think they were all good, or did you have any feelings on them about them?
I have a lot of respect for all of them. They all put a lot of hard work and time into the case. I think I would respect all of them. I don't think that I had a favorite. I think that some of them definitely, just had a different style of being a lawyer, and being my first time,
night, man. Thanks for
sitting in the
stopping
trial
by.
like that.
Appreciate
It
you.
was just interesting to see how each one of them, what angle they took, how they worked through the case. So, I have a lot of respect for all of them for putting so much time and effort into the case.
Most of you went to the sentencing today. Did you all decide as a group to do that?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of us were tired last night. We've spent a long 6 weeks. We weren't able to talk about anything for 6 weeks, and that all came to a point last night. I think that afterwards we all kind of decided that we'd made a very big decision, and we did not want to jump, out there and start talking to people. We decided that we just wanted to kind of chill out and go home for the night. Last night we decided that we were going to ask everybody. If nobody wanted to talk, nobody had to. If people didn't want to come to the sentencing, they didn't have to. But a lot of us did want to stand together, we wanted to go there. We wanted to finish this out as a group. I will say that all the jurors were very incredible people, and we all come from different walks of life, and we were able to bond over the 6 weeks. So a lot of us, some of us had particular reasons why we couldn't be there. And it's not that anybody didn't want to stand together. We were all unified, but certain people just couldn't make it today. But as a group, we did decide that we wanted to come back today. We wanted to finish out the trial, and then we would go from there as far as talking to anybody or,
I have to say, what an intelligent young man, to really be this in depth and detailed, and to be out and speak, because he's really been the only one has spoken so much, so far about what had gone on about behind the scenes. But what a great representative to give us a really intelligent perspective of what they went through, and to share that common bond in that jury room, because it's tough. I mean, you're in there with people that you don't know, and like you said, they're from all different walks of life, and that's what they try to do in a jury is get all different people in there, of your peers. You will be judged by a group of your peers, and I just lost my train of thought, but I just think it's a really great perspective and insight that he's giving here to kind of give us, behind the curtain of what goes on, and to know that, that they knew their duty in that jury room. They knew to look at all of the evidence and to make sure 100% before they handed down that verdict. So
we wanted to
really
make sure
good
that everybody
stuff.
was comfortable with it and nobody was getting out, in front of themselves or in front of the jury.
What did you think of what he said today? He said, I'm innocent, and Judge Newman kind of had this back and forth with him.
I don't really think that, I was just there to hear what he had to say, but I think that Judge Newman did a very good job of, finishing out the trial. And I think that everything that he said was a very good representation of Judge Newman. And I think that he had
Were you surprised that Alec didn't say, I'm sorry for the things that I've done or anything? I mean, he said, I'm innocent. I didn't hurt them or wouldn't hurt them. I mean, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I mean, he usually, sometimes a defendant will throw themselves on the mercy of the court and, ask for leniency or ask for the lightest sentence. He could have been given 30 years.
Because he's a
There was
narcissist.
none of that. Did you have a reaction to that?
I came today to finish out the trial, and I definitely wanted to hear what he had to say, if he had to say anything. I didn't think that he would say anything. I thought that he may have felt like he had already said enough. He had already said what he would or would not have done. So I didn't really expect him to say anything. Whenever he did, I took it with a grain of salt.
Your Constitution tie, tell me about that. I mean, why do you have a U.S. Constitution tie?
Well, I don't really own very many ties, but my dad has quite a few. So at the beginning of the trial, I wanted to be a good representation of the community and my peers. So I made it a point to, be presentable and dress nicely every day. So, every once in a while I'd throw in a tie, and this is actually one of my dad's ties, but I felt like it was very fitting for the
right.
trial. So I wore it several times throughout the past 6 weeks, and I felt like today, with the end of it all, it was a very good day to wear something representing our judiciary system.
Yeah, you're a snappy dresser. I noticed it every time I saw you in court. So, I think that's great to show great respect for the court, because there are sometimes people don't always do that. James, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that I have quite a few things to say. I think that there was a lot of people that put a lot of time and effort into the case. I have a lot of respect for all of those people. I think they worked very hard, and I think they worked very diligently. I think that some people were put in some tight spots, and they didn't want to overstep their boundaries, but they still were able to get their job done ultimately. And I think that came from a lot of help from Paul. I think that as the jurors, we also did have a tough 6 weeks. I think that a lot of credit from that would go to Faith. I think very many times throughout the 6 weeks, we prayed together. We prayed before we went in. We prayed before we came out to give the verdict. I would say that was a huge factor in us being able to sit comfortably with our decision.
So you felt like God was maybe guiding you a little bit?
Absolutely.
We got a commercial right in the heat of it here. Come on, commercials.
I think that having clarity of mind and just asking to, allow me to be able to hear what I need to hear.
Yeah, I mean, you saw some really horrible things. Did that affect you?
I think it would affect anybody, but I will say that whenever I'm sitting up there, I try not to think too much about myself, and I try to think about what I need to be seeing. I know that these are important images that I need to be seeing so that I can take in all the evidence. There might be something that I see that may stick with me, and although it may be gruesome, it's something that has to be seen for Paul and Maggie. I also think that regardless, this is an incredibly difficult time for the family, and I hate it for all of them.
Were you impacted by Buster testifying at all?
Again, whenever I'm up there, I try not to think about myself or how I'm impacted. I just try to listen as closely as I can to everything that they're saying and retain as much information as I can, just so that I can have the most honest and true opinion that I'm capable of having. So, I can't say how I was feeling in the moment or what I thought. I was just taking every single word that they said and trying to pick it apart and make it all fit together and, just really retain all that information.
And you're feeling okay with, and I'm saying, it sounds like you're very mature for your age, for 22. I mean, these are some horrible images that you guys had to see. I didn't get to see them, but I can only imagine given what we were told was on the images. How are you feeling? I mean, are you, I know you're probably still decompressing from this.
We spoke earlier. I think that a lot of the jurors were going to need more time to just really get a grasp on that it's over. We're done with the trial, and now we have to get back to our lives. I think that it'll take a bit more time to really know how we're all feeling. But at the moment, I'm just, I'm secure in my decision, and there were definitely some awful things that we had to look at and that we had to see. And some of those may stick with some of the jurors and all the jurors for a very, very long time. They were definitely not something that you see every day and something that you hope to never have to see or something that you hope never happened. But it's just going to, take time for a lot of people, I'm sure.
And you said, you had to do this for Maggie and Paul. Do you feel like you have a clear idea of what happened that night?
I do, just based off of the evidence.
This is interesting. This will be interesting.
And, obviously there's some differing opinions from different witnesses.
I don't know if he's going to give his account, but this hopefully does. I'd love to hear what his personal perspective is.
And stuff. But I do think that being able to see all of the evidence, hear all the witnesses, and just seeing where everything played out, being able to go out there to the actual crime scene itself, and you're able to see how close proximity, and you're able to see different little things that maybe weren't pointed out by any of the witnesses or any of the, prosecution defense. You're able to kind of picture it, and you're able to kind of see what happened. And that kind of goes back to earlier whenever you were asking if I think that he told any truth whenever he was on the stand. And I think that it makes sense for him to go down there on the golf cart. I don't think that he went down there originally with them. So, that's one of the parts of the truth that I believe, filtered in with most of the lie.
Do you think do you think it was true that Maggie wanted him to come and he said no? Do you think there was a confrontation about the pills? I mean, do you have any thoughts?
Well, that kind of goes to another question that you had asked earlier about him on the stand and things that he said. So that was one thing that I kind of noticed is he's up there and he's talking a lot. Oftentimes the prosecution would just let him run with it. Whenever he started to say something, they just wouldn't say much and they would let him build on it and build on it. And whenever he was talking about whether she was going to come or whether she wasn't, he had mentioned that there had been prior testimony that any time that she was going to be going to the beach, that she was going to be taking the dogs. So he used that and he said that she didn't have the dogs. So she was obviously planning on coming back to Moselle, but she was going to a doctor's appointment. And I know that you can't take your dogs into the doctor's office and she's not going to leave them in the hot car. So I don't really think that
good
proves
observation.
anything. And they were also having work done down there at Edisto. You don't want your dogs running around the house whenever you've got work going on down there.
Right.
So there was just some little things like that didn't really add up. You know, I felt like he was trying to put something in there to solidify his story, but really it was just kind of a little bit more questionable.
Do you think that Maggie was using the hose in the kennel video and he got the chicken from Bubba? I mean, do you have any thoughts on what you think happened?
You know, we don't have a dead set time on when everything happened as far as after the video. We know there's a period of time between whenever that video ends and whenever he picks up his phone at the house. So I think that I hear a hose in the background whenever they're taking that video. And I know that Alec is calling for Bubba. So I do think that Maggie was probably washing out the dog pens. And I think that he was getting the chicken. And that was another part of his testimony is he was saying, you know, Bubba is running up to me. He's wanting to show me the chicken. He's wanting to give it to me. He's proud of it. But at the same time, you hear him holler for Bubba 2 to 3 times in the video. It doesn't really seem like he's, you know, running up to him. It kind of seems like he's having to call him to him.
Here are the top 3 dirty self-defense moves. Number 1, throwing dirt in your opponent's eyes.
That's kind of funny.
I know that I've got several dogs, and there are dogs that are happy and they want to run around with it themselves, you know. So just small things like that. Like I said, I was listening to every word and I was trying to just make it make sense. And there's some things that are just like, well, that doesn't really make sense with what I saw in the video, or that doesn't make sense with what I heard here, things like that.
Do you think he tossed the phone out when they think he did that night?
You know, I'm not sure. I think that he had the phone at some point in time, and there's debate on whether it would turn on or whether it wouldn't. And we have no idea how he threw the phone. We have no idea whether he was holding it in his hand the whole time and had it turned off. We don't know, but it makes sense to me for him to have thrown the phone.
James, I don't want to keep you any longer. I really appreciate it. Anything else you want to add?
Do you mind if I ask?
Yeah, sure.
So do you think if he hadn't taken the stand, do you think how did him testifying sort of affect things for you guys? Is it possible that maybe it would have left? I mean, could you see it been a not guilty verdict if he hadn't taken the stand? I'm trying to kind of understand how that played into it. Did that solidify things in your mind, or?
I think it was an aspect, and I think it was a part of the trial, but I don't think it was the make or break point. And I don't think that it was a situation where if he didn't take the stand, he wouldn't have been found guilty. I think that there was enough evidence there gathered by SLED and produced by Paul that it was there. He was there. And I think that we all, you know, had enough evidence there that whenever we went and deliberate, there was enough there whether he got on the stand or not.
Without the kennel video, do you think there was enough there?
I'm not sure because there was the kennel video. And, you know, like I said, I made my decision at the end of the trial whenever I had all the evidence. So, you know, I'd have to go all the way back to the beginning and forget everything I knew and then go without the kennel video to be able to make that call.
Wow.
There was a lot of evidence, and I just know that was a part of it. And
I still think that was the big sticking point, the TikTok video.
Crucial part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that who it was provided by spoke a lot.
Did the Moselle visit take you more toward?
What a massive property. Look at this property. It's huge. Just in the middle of nowhere. Long road to the house. Wow. It's very intense. Very, very intense.
Guilty or not guilty, and why?
So again, like I said earlier, I waited until the end to make my decision. But whenever I'm at the end and I'm, you know, thinking about all this evidence, there was parts that I noticed at the Moselle property that, you know, were evident to me that solidified my answer of guilty. There was a lot of question about. So there was a lot of questioning about the second shot to Paul. And to me, the way that it was described and the way that it was portrayed, it just didn't look right. But what did make sense to me, and something that I'd made note of before we went to the Moselle property, because I didn't know that we were going to the Moselle property, but I was curious, is that, for one, I think that he would have been looking at Paul. And whenever we get out there, it's a very tight room. And there is about a 1 to 1.5 inch threshold at the base of that door. I think if he's looking at Paul and he's just shot a buckshot, which if you're not firm, it can rock you pretty good. I think he could have been unbalanced, and I think he could have tripped over that threshold, and that puts him on the ground shooting upward as Paul's coming out. And I think that makes sense to me for the angle of the shot.
Okay, and one more question.
It's pretty good.
Is this okay in there? Okay, why do you think he did it?
I don't think like that. I don't have the capability of thinking to be able to do something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I'd ever be able to answer why somebody would do something like that. I think that there is a lot of contributing factors that somebody could throw in, and we heard a lot throughout the trial, but I still think there's more that we haven't heard, and there still may be more that nobody knows about. I think that it doesn't make sense to do that, but I know that there's people in the world that don't make sense, and they do things without making it make sense. So I don't know that there is an answer other than that it happened and that it shouldn't have. I think we can all agree on that.
Wow, that's great. What a great perspective from a very intelligent juror on that Alec Murdaugh jury pool. It's really, really intelligent, and to get that inside perspective of how they all work together and how he kind of concluded. And I give him a lot of credit that he listened to all the evidence and all the facts in that case and didn't make a predetermined answer to whether if he was guilty or innocent right away. He didn't want that to cloud his decision making in that trial, and to go back and make sure that they were 100% clear, answered any questions before they came out and gave that verdict of guilty on all counts. So very, very good stuff there. All right, my friends, we are at the hour and 30-minute mark. I am, again, a little off night for me. Crowd was down a little, viewers were down a little bit this evening. I don't normally stream on Tuesdays, but I'm going to be grinding a lot coming up and trying to stream as much as I can. But definitely my two set nights are Sunday, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're new over here on the channel, please make sure to go down, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on, because that's the most important thing, so you get notifications every single time I go live. And the best thing too is to check my community tab. I do a lot of communicating on there. You can see all my upcoming live streams if you're not getting notification of them. YouTube's just sometimes not friendly like that. So they tend to shadow ban a little bit. But again, I wanted to thank everybody this evening for hanging out, doing this hour and a half with me. I will be back for a huge show, an awesome show that I'm so thankful for. I have the Drunk Turkeys on Thursday night, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. The tab is already up for that. You just got to go over and hit the reminder button. Come join us for that live show. We're going to do 2 hours on Brian Koberger in the Idaho 4. You're not going to want to miss that. What I'm going to do really quick before everybody bounce out of the chat is I'm going to drop the link for that reminder. You can go over, click into that link that I just posted, hit the remind me button, and that will keep you guys up to date. And when we go live, I'm actually going to probably come back tomorrow night on my standard night Wednesday and stream 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see all of you guys there. Again, I am the Opinionated Idiot. My name is Brian. Thank you so much for joining the stream, and I will see you guys tomorrow and Thursday. Don't miss that Thursday show. Bye, guys. Have a good night.